The truck started making that grinding noise again about 2 miles from the tower. Not great timing, but I kept going. The access road was more snow than road by then, just 2 ruts cutting through white that came up past the bumper in places. Late November in the Bitterroots. This was what I'd signed up for. The trees pressed in close on both sides, mostly Douglas fir and lodgepole pine, branches heavy with snow that hadn't been there 3 hours ago when I'd left the district station. I could see maybe 30 feet ahead through the windshield before everything turned into grey static. The defroster wheezed. The grinding got louder. I downshifted and kept the wheel steady. The truck fishtailed once, caught, kept moving. If I stopped, I probably wasn't getting started again, not without chains, and I'd left those back in my apartment because I'm an idiot sometimes. Most times. The tower appeared through the trees like something out of an old fire lookout calendar. 40 feet tall, metal framework, painted that specific shade of Forest Service brown that's supposed to blend in, but really just looks industrial. Small cabin at the top, with windows on all sides, and a catwalk running around the perimeter. I'd seen photos during the assignment briefing, but photos don't show you how alone a place feels. I parked as close to the base as I could manage and killed the engine. It ticked in the cold. The silence after was the kind that makes your ears ring. Took me 3 trips to haul everything up the stairs. My pack, 2 duffel bags, a crate of supplies, the backup radio battery Jessica had insisted I take. The steps were slick with ice under a thin layer of snow. I went slow. Breaking an ankle on day 1 would have been a bad start. The cabin was maybe 12 feet by 12 feet. Everything built compact and functional. Propane heater in the corner, narrow cot against the south wall, desk with the radio equipment and weather station monitors, shelves for supplies, 4 windows with shutters I could close if the wind got bad. It smelled like dust and old wood and something else. Mouse droppings, probably. I'd be cleaning those out later. I got the heater going first. Then I tested the radio. Dispatch, this is Whitefish Ridge. Radio check. Static for about 10 seconds. Then Jessica's voice came through, warm and clear. Whitefish Ridge, we read you fine. You made it up okay? Yeah, road's pretty rough but passable. Forecast says another 6 inches tonight. You'll be snowed in by morning. That's the idea. She paused. I could hear her smile through the radio. Well, welcome to your winter home, Willie. Checking in at 0800 and 1800 Daily Standard Protocol. You need anything before we lose light? I'm good. Copy that. Stay warm up there. Will do. I hung the radio handset back on its mount and looked out the north window. Trees in every direction, rolling down into valleys I couldn't see the bottom of. The cloud ceiling was low and getting lower. Snow was already starting again, small dry flakes that ticked against the glass. Floyd had gone over everything twice before I left. The isolation, the weather, the fact that I'd be the only person within 15 miles once the snow got serious. 6 weeks of solo winter monitoring. Most rangers avoid these assignments. Too quiet, too remote, too much time in your own head. He'd looked at me over his desk with that expression he gets, the one that says he's thinking something he's not going to say out loud. You sure about this, Willie? It's a long time to be alone up there. I'm sure. No Thanksgiving, no Christmas unless you count what you bring with you. I know. He'd signed the assignment form, didn't ask anything else. Floyd's good at knowing when to stop pushing. What he didn't know, what nobody at the station knew, was that I'd been asking about Whitefish Ridge for 2 years. Casual questions. Where the coverage areas overlapped. Which towers saw the most activity. Which ones went unmanned in winter. I'd studied the old patrol maps during lunch breaks when the office was quiet. Justin's last known position had been logged at 16 miles northeast of here. His radio went dead somewhere between there and the Clearwater drainage. 5 years ago, this January, they'd searched for 3 weeks. Helicopters, dog teams, 40 volunteers from 3 counties. I'd been out there every day until Floyd pulled me off the line because I wasn't sleeping and I'd stopped eating and I was making mistakes. They found his backpack caught in deadfall near Moose Creek. Nothing else. No body, no tracks that went anywhere, no explanation that made sense. Missing, presumed dead. That's what the final report said. I'd read that report so many times I could recite it. Every witness statement, every grid coordinate, every piece of evidence they'd logged. There was nothing useful in it, just a lot of words that added up to, "we don't know." So yeah, I'd requested this tower, this specific assignment in these specific woods during the same season he'd disappeared. And I hadn't told Floyd or anyone else, because they'd have pulled me from consideration immediately. Too personal, too close to it. They'd have been right, probably. I unpacked as the light failed. Clothes in the footlocker under the cot, food supplies organized on the shelves, spare batteries in the desk drawer. I'd brought 3 books, a deck of cards, and a notebook I probably wouldn't write in. That was it for entertainment. The first week went exactly how Floyd said it would. Quiet, routine, the kind of days that blur together. I woke up at 0700 when my watch alarm went off, made coffee on the propane burner, checked the weather instruments and logged the readings in the station book. Temperature, wind speed, precipitation, visibility. Then the first radio check with Jessica at 0800. Morning, Whitefish Ridge. Morning dispatch, all clear here. 12 degrees, wind from the northwest at 8 miles per hour, skies overcast. Copy. How's the snow accumulation? About 18 inches on the catwalk, drifting on the east side. Stay off that catwalk if it's drifting. Last thing we need is you going over the rail. Yeah, I know. She always added something after the official business. Asked how I was sleeping, if the heater was working okay, if I'd seen any wildlife. Small talk that kept you tethered to the idea that other people existed somewhere. I kept my answers short, but I didn't mind it. The days were all the same. After the morning check, I'd do a visual scan with the binoculars, looking for smoke or anything unusual. Never saw smoke. Saw a lot of ravens and a few deer moving through the timber below. Saw the weather change, snow coming in waves, sometimes clear patches where the sky turned that hard winter blue that hurts to look at. I'd eat lunch around noon, soup usually, something I could heat quick. Afternoons I'd maintain the equipment, test the backup systems, check the propane levels, clear snow off the catwalk if it built up too much, read one of the books, stare out the windows at the trees and the grey distance, and think about things I shouldn't think about. Evening radio check at 1800. Whitefish Ridge, dispatch. Dispatch, all clear. Temperature dropping to 8 degrees, wind calm, light snow. Copy that. Sleep well, Willie. You too. Then dinner, then dark. The dark up there was total. No light pollution, no moon most nights because of the clouds. Just the small glow from the heater and whatever I had on for reading. I usually went to bed by 2100 because there wasn't much else to do. I kept the food cache locked up beneath the tower platform. Standard protocol for bear country, even though bears should have been denned up by then. The cache was a metal box bolted to the framework, about 4 feet by 3 feet, with a heavy padlock. I'd stocked it with frozen meat, backup propane canisters, and emergency supplies I'd need if something happened to the cabin. Checked it every couple days, never had a reason to worry about it. On the 8th morning, I went down to swap out an empty propane canister, and the lock was on the ground, not broken, just open, sitting in the snow next to the cache door. The door itself was pried partway open, bent where something had forced the latch. I stood there looking at it for probably 30 seconds, my breath fogging in the cold. I pulled the door the rest of the way open. Most of the stuff was still there. The propane canisters, the emergency blankets, the first aid kit, but the frozen venison was gone. 3 packages, each about 2 pounds. I'd had them stacked on the left side of the cache, wrapped in butcher paper. Just gone. I radioed Jessica at the next scheduled check. 1800 hours, right on time. Whitefish Ridge to dispatch. Go ahead, Willie. Got a situation with the cache. I kept my voice level. Procedural. Lock was opened, door pried. 3 packages of venison missing. Silence on her end for maybe 3 seconds. Then, opened or broken? Opened. Lock was on the ground, not damaged. Could be someone desperate, she said. Her tone stayed calm. That was Jessica, always steady. Hiker got caught in the weather, needed supplies. It happens. I looked out the window at the snow. Nobody hiked out here in late November. The access road was barely passable with a truck. On foot in this weather, you'd be dead in a day. Maybe, I said. Or a wolverine, Jessica added. They're clever. I've seen them figure out latches before. I thought about the bent metal, the way the door had been forced partway before the lock came open. Wolverines were strong, sure, but this felt different. Yeah, I said. Could be. You want me to log it for Floyd? Not yet. I'll keep an eye on it. All right, stay warm up there. Copy. I signed off and stared at the cache through the south window. The lock sat on my desk now. I'd brought it up after finding it. No scratches on the shackle, no dents. It looked like someone had just turned the key and opened it clean. I didn't have the only key. There was a master back at the district station, but nobody was coming out here. Jessica would have told me if someone was scheduled. I ate dinner, canned beef stew. Couldn't taste much of it. I kept looking down at the cache through the window between bites. After I cleaned up, I dug through my personal pack and found the trail camera I'd brought. Bushnell Trophy Cam, 8 megapixel, motion activated, infrared for night shots. I'd packed it thinking I might catch some wildlife photos. Something to do during the long stretches. I pulled on my jacket and headed down. The stairs had a thin layer of ice under the new snow. I took them slow, one hand on the rail. The cache sat in the shadows under the platform. I mounted the camera on the nearest support beam, about 6 feet back, angled it straight at the door, checked the settings. Motion sensor on, night vision on, SD card empty and ready. It took maybe 10 minutes. My fingers went numb, even through the gloves. When I finished, I climbed back up and got the feeling back into my hands over the heater. That'd do it. Whatever came back, I'd have it on camera. Morning check at 0800. I gave Jessica the numbers. 4 degrees. Wind calm. Clear skies for the first time in a week. Sounds cold, she said. It is. Any more trouble with the cache? I'll check after we're done. All right. You installed that camera? I paused. I hadn't mentioned the camera yesterday. Yeah. Good thinking. Let me know what you find. Copy. I bundled up and went down before I even made coffee. Wanted to check it right away. The lock was on the ground again. Cache door pried open wider this time. The metal latch was bent almost 90 degrees now. I pulled the door the rest of the way and looked inside. The elk steaks were gone. 4 of them, wrapped in white butcher paper, each one marked with black marker. Also the bacon, a whole pack, pound and a half, hickory smoked. Everything else sat untouched. The propane canisters, the emergency blankets, the first aid kit, just the meat. I stood there for a minute. My breath came out in clouds. Then I remembered the camera. I unclipped it from the beam and brought it upstairs. Turned the heater up and sat at the desk. Pulled the SD card and slotted it into my laptop. The files loaded. Timestamps ran from 1947 hours yesterday through 0604 this morning. Lots of clips. I started going through them. 1947. Me installing the camera. 2213. A deer passing through. Just the edge of it in frame. 2306. Wind blowing snow past the lens. 0138. Nothing visible. Just darkness and the cache door closed. 0312. Static. Pure white noise. No image. Just flickering grey and white pixels and a sound like radio interference. I checked the timestamp. Started at 0312. Ended at 0329. 17 minutes. After that, clean footage again. 0329 showed the cache door pried open, hanging crooked on its bent latch. 0330, more wind. 0415, a raven landing on the platform above. Every frame after the static window recorded perfectly. Sharp image. Clear night vision. No problems. I went back to the static section. Watched it 3 times. Just 17 minutes of white noise. Then normal footage resuming with the cache already open and the meat already gone. I checked the camera settings. Battery full. Memory card fine. Motion sensor working before and after. No error messages. Nothing. Equipment malfunction didn't make sense. The camera worked perfectly for every other clip. Just that one window. Right when something opened the cache and took the food. I sat back, stared at the screen. That bugged me, more than a little. I put the camera back in my pack and went down again. The sun was up now. Low angle, long shadows. Everything blue-white with snow. I walked around the cache, looked at the ground. Tracks. Not animal tracks. Not boot prints either. Footprints. Bare feet. Human-shaped. 5 toes, heel, arch. But wrong. They sank deep into the snow. I knelt down next to one. The depression went down almost 8 inches into snow that had packed solid over the last week. I'd walked over this same area yesterday. My boot prints barely went 3 inches deep. The feet were big. I put my glove next to one for reference. My hand was about 7 inches across. The print was wider, maybe 10 inches. Long, too. 14 inches from heel to toe, I figured. I stood and followed them. They came from the east, from the tree line, about 40 yards out. Walked straight to the cache, then back the same way. The stride length made my neck tight. I paced it out, 4 feet between prints, sometimes 4.5. I'm 6'1". My normal walking stride is maybe 2.5 feet. Running, I might hit 3.5. This thing was taking 4-foot steps, just walking. I did the math in my head. Stride length correlates roughly to height. 4-foot stride meant someone over 7 feet tall, maybe 7.5. The tracks led into the trees. I followed them. The forest swallowed the light. Snow sat heavy on the pine branches. My breath hung in the air. I could hear my pulse in my ears. The tracks kept going. Straight line. Didn't wander, didn't hesitate. Then I saw the first tree. Deep gouges in the bark. 5 parallel lines. Each one carved maybe ½ an inch into the wood. They started about 8 feet up the trunk and dragged down for 2 feet. I stopped. Looked up at where they started. 8 feet high. I couldn't reach that without climbing. And these weren't shallow scratches. They were deep, like something with serious strength had dug into the bark and dragged down. I walked to the next tree. Same marks, 5 parallel lines, 8 feet up. Then another tree, and another. Claw marks. That's what they looked like. 5 claws raking down the bark over and over. I counted 12 trees with the marks. All of them along the path the tracks took into the forest. The tracks kept going deeper into the timber. I stood there and looked into the shadows. The trees were thick. Visibility dropped to maybe 30 feet. I thought about following them further. Then I turned around and walked back to the tower. My hands were shaking. Didn't realize it until I got to the stairs. I shoved them in my pockets and climbed up, got inside, shut the door, turned the heater up even though it was already running. I made coffee. Took 3 tries to get the propane burner lit, because my hands wouldn't stay steady. The tracks were there. I'd seen them, measured them, followed them. Bare feet, sub-zero temperatures, 7-foot stride, claw marks 8 feet up. I sat at the desk and drank the coffee. It burned my tongue. I didn't care. 17 minutes of static, right when the cache got opened. I looked out at the tree line. The gouged trees were out there. The tracks leading deeper into the forest. Whatever made them was out there too. The evening check-in was normal until it wasn't. I reached for the radio handset at 6 on the dot, same as always. Whitefish Ridge to dispatch. Go ahead, Willie. Jessica's voice came through clear. Evening report. Temperatures dropped to -2. Winds picked up from the northwest at 12 miles per hour. Skies clear. Copy that. How's the cache situation? I looked at the lock sitting on my desk next to the camera. No change since this morning. You staying warm up there? Heater's working fine. Good. Stay inside tonight, okay? That wind'll cut right through you. Copy. All right, Willie. Talk to you at 0800. Roger. Whitefish Ridge out. I set the handset back in its cradle. The radio hissed with dead air for a second, the way it always did between transmissions. White noise. Static. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow and steady, in and out, like someone standing too close to a microphone. I stared at the radio. The transmission light was off. Nobody was broadcasting. But the breathing continued through the speaker, wet sounding on the inhale. Deep, deliberate. I grabbed the handset. Dispatch, this is Whitefish Ridge. Jessica answered immediately. Go ahead. You getting any interference on your end? Interference? What kind? Static. Background noise. A pause. Negative, Willie. Signal's clear here. You having trouble with your equipment? I listened. The breathing was still there, quiet beneath Jessica's voice, a rhythm that didn't match hers at all. Maybe, I said. I'll check the connections. Want me to stay on while you troubleshoot? No, I'm good. Probably just a loose wire. All right. Let me know if it persists. Will do. Whitefish Ridge out. I set the handset down and waited. The breathing didn't stop. It came from the speaker itself, slow, wet inhalations that seemed to fill the small cabin. I checked the transmission light again. Off. Nobody was broadcasting. The frequency was clear, but the breathing continued. I reached over and turned the volume knob down halfway. The breathing got quieter, but didn't disappear. I could still hear it under the static, rhythmic and patient. My coffee had gone cold in the mug next to the radio. I picked it up, took a sip, set it back down. Outside the north window, the sky had gone full dark. No moon tonight, just stars and the black shapes of trees against snow. The breathing changed. It got faster, shallower, like someone climbing stairs or walking uphill through deep snow. I stood up from the desk and checked the radio connections on the back panel. Everything was tight. No loose cables, no frayed wires. The backup battery showed full charge. The antenna cable ran clean through the wall mount to the external antenna on the roof. Nothing wrong with the equipment. The breathing slowed again, back to that deep, steady rhythm. I sat down and stared at the speaker grill. Black metal mesh, maybe 3 inches across. Standard issue. I'd used radios exactly like this one for 8 years. Never had a problem. The breathing turned into a whisper. I leaned closer. The voice was quiet at first, just under the static. I couldn't make out words. Then it got clearer. Let me in. My hand stopped halfway to the coffee mug. The voice was mine. Not similar, not close. Exactly mine. Same flat tone, same Midwestern vowels, same slight rasp I got when I hadn't had enough water. Let me in, it said again, a little louder. I stood up fast enough that my chair scraped against the plywood floor. The voice kept going. Let me in. Let me in. Faster now, more urgent. My own voice coming out of the radio speaker, repeating the same 3 words over and over. Let me in. Let me in. Let me in. I grabbed the radio and twisted the volume knob all the way down to 0. The voice didn't stop. It came through just as loud as before, my own voice begging in a tone I'd never used, desperate and insistent. Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in. I yanked the power cable out of the back of the radio. The voice continued. Let me in, let me in, let me in. I ripped the backup battery out of its compartment and threw it across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. The radio went dead. No power, no lights, no static, but the voice kept coming from the speaker. "Let me in, let me in, let me in, let me in." I backed away from the desk until my shoulders hit the south wall. The voice got louder, filling the cabin, my own voice screaming now in a way that made my throat hurt just hearing it. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." I looked at the door. Solid wood with a deadbolt I'd locked after coming up from the cache that morning. The windows had interior shutters, all closed against the cold. Nothing was getting in. The voice reached a peak, frantic and raw. "Let me in, let me in, let me..." Silence. Complete silence. No static, no breathing, no voice. I stood against the wall for maybe 2 minutes, just listening. The heater ticked in the corner. Wind rattled the shutters, nothing else. I moved to the cot and grabbed the frame. It wasn't heavy, maybe 40 pounds. I dragged it across the floor to the door and wedged it lengthwise against the frame. Then I stacked the supply crates on top. Canned goods, rice bags, dried beans. Another 60 pounds at least. It wouldn't stop anything determined, but it'd slow something down. Make noise. I went to my pack and pulled out the service pistol. Glock 17, 9mm standard Ranger issue for bear country. I kept it in a hard case at the bottom of the pack. Hadn't touched it since I'd arrived. I checked the magazine. Empty. I found the ammunition box in the same pocket, pulled out 15 rounds, loaded the magazine and chambered one. 16 total. Safety on. I turned off the reading light. The cabin went dark except for the blue glow from the heater pilot light. I sat down at the desk with the pistol in my lap and waited. The windows showed nothing but black. No stars anymore. Clouds must have moved in. I checked my watch. 8:47. The minutes crawled past. 9 o'clock. 9:30. 10. Nothing happened. My eyes adjusted to the dark. I could see the outline of the barricaded door, the shapes of the shuttered windows, the bulk of the heater in the corner. Outside, the wind died down. It got quiet. Really quiet. The kind of quiet you only get in deep winter in the middle of nowhere, when the snow dampens every sound and there's not a soul around for miles. I heard metal groan. It came from below, underneath the platform. A low, creaking sound, like weight settling on the framework. I stood up. The pistol felt slick in my hand. I realized my palms were sweating, even though the cabin was maybe 50 degrees. The groaning stopped. Then the footsteps started. Heavy impacts on the exterior stairs. Deliberate, slow. Each one shook the tower structure enough that I felt it through the floor. I checked my watch. 11:53. The footsteps continued. Steady rhythm. Thud. Pause. Thud. Pause. I started counting. 1, 2, 3. I knew this tower. I'd climbed those stairs twice a day for over a week. 32 steps from ground to platform. I'd counted them the first day while hauling supplies. 10, 11, 12. My breath came out in visible clouds. The temperature had dropped. The heater was still running, but the cold was seeping in anyway. 20, 21, 22. The footsteps didn't waver. Same heavy impact, same pause between each one. 30, 31, 32. I stopped breathing. The footsteps didn't stop. 33. I stared at the door. The barricade looked flimsy now. A cot and some boxes. 34, 35. There were only 32 steps. 40. The impacts kept coming, steady, patient. 45, 46, 47, then nothing. Complete silence. I stood in the dark with the pistol raised, and my breath fogging the air in front of my face, and listened to absolutely nothing at all. The shadow came at the north window first. I saw it through the frost on the glass, just the shape of something moving outside, blocking what little ambient light filtered through the cloud cover. The frosted window made everything blurry, but the silhouette was clear enough, tall, way too tall. The head reached past where the window frame should have ended, up into the overhang of the roof. I kept the pistol raised, finger off the trigger but ready. The thing moved closer to the glass, pressed against it maybe. The frost patterns shifted slightly from the contact or the temperature difference. Hard to tell. The shape resolved a little. Gaunt. That was the word that came to me. Impossibly thin for something that tall. Like someone had taken a person and stretched them on a rack. The proportions were wrong. Arms too long. Torso elongated. The head crowned with what looked like antlers at first. Then maybe branches. They jutted up and out at angles that didn't match any deer or elk I'd ever seen. Too many points. Too irregular. Some curved back. Some twisted sideways. Could have been antlers that had grown wrong, deformed. Could have been dead wood somehow grafted to bone. I couldn't tell through the frost. The thing stood there. I counted to 20 in my head. My breath was still visible in the cabin despite the heater running full blast. The cold had settled in deep, like the walls had stopped insulating entirely. At 23 seconds it spoke. Willard. My whole body went rigid. Nobody called me that. Nobody except Justin when we were kids. He'd used it to annoy me, dragging out both syllables. Willard. I'd hated it. Told him to stop 100 times. He'd grinned and kept doing it anyway because that's what little brothers do. I hadn't heard that name in 5 years. The voice was Justin's. Exact pitch, exact cadence. The slight rasp he'd had from smoking for 2 years in high school before he quit. The way he rounded his vowels. A habit from our mom's side of the family. Willard, I can't feel my hands. I pressed my back harder against the south wall. The pistol shook. I steadied it with both hands. You there? The voice paused. I know you're there. I can hear you breathing. I stopped breathing. Please, it's cold out here. The shadow shifted at the window. The head tilted, bird-like. The antler branch things moved with it, scraping against the cabin's exterior with a sound like fingernails on metal. I wanted to say something. My throat had closed up entirely. Remember Dad's funeral? The voice was conversational now, calm. Justin talking like we were sitting at a bar somewhere, catching up. You wore the grey suit, the one Mom bought you for graduation. It didn't fit right anymore, too tight in the shoulders. That was true. I'd gained muscle in the 2 years between graduation and Dad's death. The suit had pulled across my back when I sat down in the pew. You didn't cry, the voice continued. Not during the service. Not at the reception after. You stood by the coffee table and ate 7 of those little sandwiches. The ones with cucumber. You hate cucumber. I had eaten them. I'd needed something to do with my hands, and the sandwich tray was right there. I hadn't tasted a single one. But you cried in the truck on the way home. The voice dropped lower, intimate. I was in the passenger seat. You pulled over on Highway 12, right past the turnoff for Lolo Creek. You put your head on the steering wheel and cried for 4 minutes. My hands were shaking so hard I had to lower the pistol. I'd never told anyone about that. Justin had sat there in the passenger seat, not saying anything, just putting his hand on my shoulder until I was done. Then we'd driven the rest of the way in silence. Nobody else knew. Nobody. Willard, please. The voice cracked. Desperate now. I'm trapped out here. I can't get warm. I'm so hungry. The shadow moved closer. I could see more detail now through the frost. The gaunt torso. The arms hanging too long, almost to where knees should be. The fingers. God, the fingers looked too long too. Maybe 7 inches each. They won't let me leave. The voice was Justin's, but starting to fray at the edges, words coming faster. I've been trying. I've been walking, but I can't find the way out. Everything looks the same. Trees and snow and trees and snow, and I'm so hungry, Willard. So hungry I can't think. I can't remember. I can't... The words dissolved into a sound that wasn't human. A wet snarl that came from deeper in the chest than any person could produce. Guttural. Animal. Then back to Justin's voice, higher now, pleading. Help me. You have food. I can smell it. The meat. Please. I just need to eat something, anything. Please let me in. Please, please, please. Another snarl. This one longer. The shadow at the window thrashed, and something hit the glass hard enough to make it flex inward. Not break, but close. Then the voice reformed, coherent again. I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's hard to think, hard to remember who I am. But it's me, it's Justin. You know it's me. I know things. I know about the scar on your arm. From when you fell off the Henderson's fence when you were 9, I was 6. I ran to get Mum. The scar on my left forearm burned like he'd reached through the wall and touched it. I know you requested this tower. Floyd doesn't know why, but I do. You're looking for me. You never stopped. The voice softened. I'm here, Willard. I'm right here. Just open the door. I stood frozen. The pistol hung at my side. Every detail the thing recounted was true. Perfect. Things only Justin could know. Things I'd never written down, never told anyone. But Justin was dead. Presumed dead. Missing. Please. The voice was breaking now. It hurts. Everything hurts. I'm so cold and so hungry, and I just want to come inside. I just want to be warm again. Don't you want to see me? Don't you? The snarl came back. Louder this time. The shadow convulsed at the window, and the glass cracked. Not shattered. Just a single fracture line running diagonal from corner to corner. The voice cycled back, pleading, raging, pleading again. The words tumbled over each other. Let me in, I'm your brother. I'm so hungry, please, Willard, please, I can't help it. I need, snarling. Just open the door, just for a second. I won't hurt you, I promise. I just need food, I just need... More snarling. The shadow grew larger, pressing against the window fully now. Then it moved. To the east wall. I heard the metal groan, not the framework this time. The actual wall sheeting, riveted panels that formed the cabin exterior. Something grabbed the edge of one panel. I heard the rivets pop. 1, 2, 3, 4 in rapid succession, like gunshots. The metal peeled back with a shriek that went through my teeth. I ran to the east wall and pressed against it. Stupid. The thing was right there on the other side, but I couldn't think. The metal was coming apart and I needed to... What? Hold it in place with my body weight? The peeling stopped. I could hear breathing, right on the other side of the wall, inches from my face. Heavy, wet breathing that didn't match human rhythm. Too fast, too shallow, then too slow and deep. I can hear your heart, Justin's voice said, calm again. It's beating so fast. The metal groaned. Another rivet popped. I shoved away from the wall and stumbled back to the desk. The thing was strong enough to tear the cabin apart. The walls wouldn't hold. The barricade on the door was pointless. The shutters were just wood and hinges. I needed to see it. That thought cut through everything else. I needed to see what was out there, what was using my brother's voice, what had left those tracks and those claw marks and taken the meat from the cache. I couldn't fight something I couldn't see. My flashlight was in the pack, the big mag light, 4 D-cell batteries, heavy enough to use as a club if it came to that. I'd unpacked most of my gear, but the flashlight had stayed in the bottom of the pack because I hadn't needed it yet. The reading light and heater glow had been enough. I dropped to my knees next to the cot, still wedged against the door, and dragged my pack out from underneath. The zipper stuck. My fingers were shaking again. I yanked it harder and the zipper gave, running along the track. The breathing outside moved, from the east wall to the north window again. Fast, faster than anything that size should move. I dug through the pack. Extra socks, thermal layer, first aid kit. Where the hell was the flashlight? The north window exploded inward. My fingers closed around the flashlight at the bottom of the pack. 4 D-cells, heavy, solid. I yanked it free and spun toward the north window. Glass covered the floor. Jagged pieces, some big as my palm. The window frame was just gone. Empty space where it used to be. cold air pouring in. I clicked the flashlight on and aimed it at the opening. Nothing there, just darkness and wind, and the catwalk railing beyond the shattered frame. I swept the beam left to right across the whole window. Empty. I stood up slow, knees cracking, and moved closer. Kept the pistol raised in my right hand, flashlight in my left, crossing my wrists the way they taught us at the academy 15 years back. The catwalk was empty, snow on the metal grating, undisturbed. I angled the beam down through the grating to the platform below. Something glinted. I stopped breathing, moved the light back. There, in the snow on the platform, maybe 20 feet down, right at the base of the stairs. Metal, small, circular shape partially buried in the snow. I pressed against the window frame and leaned out into the cold, aiming the beam straight down. The object caught the light again. I could see it clearly now. A badge, ranger badge on a leather cord, frozen stiff, dark against the white snow. My stomach dropped, just completely dropped. I knew that badge, knew the number stamped on it before I could even read it from this distance. 73412, Justin's identification number, his tags, the ones he wore every single day on duty because he said the chain made his neck itch and the cord was better, the ones that disappeared with him 5 years ago. I stood there with the wind hitting my face, flashlight beam locked on that badge, and my brain just stopped working right. Couldn't make the pieces fit. Justin's badge, here, directly below my tower, sitting on top of the snow like someone placed it there. Not buried, not half covered from 5 years of weather and snowfall. On top, recent, positioned right where I'd see it if I looked down. My hand started shaking, not from the cold. The flashlight beam wobbled, and I had to grip it tighter with both hands, tucking the pistol under my arm for a second. The light steadied. I pulled back from the window and turned around. The cabin looked wrong. Took me a second to figure out why. The food shelf. 3 weeks of supplies still stacked there. Cans of soup, boxes of rice, packages of pasta. I'd been here 8 days. Should have gone through a third of it, maybe more. Nothing was missing. I walked to the shelf, ran the flashlight beam across it, counted. 12 cans of soup. Same number I'd stocked on day 1. 6 boxes of instant rice. Same number. The pasta, the oatmeal packets, the coffee, all of it exactly like I'd left it. My stomach cramped. Sharp, twisting pain that made me double over for a second. When had I last eaten? I tried to remember. Canned beef stew 2 nights ago. No, 3 nights ago, after I found the cache the second time. I'd heated it up, ate it at the desk while watching the cache through the window. Before that, soup. Tomato soup, I think, or maybe chicken noodle. I couldn't remember. Couldn't remember yesterday's meals, or the day before. Couldn't picture sitting down with food, lifting a spoon, swallowing. My hands were shaking worse now. I set the flashlight on the desk, still holding the pistol. Looked at my fingers. They looked thin, thinner than they should be. The skin tight over the knuckles. I pulled up my sleeve. My forearm looked wrong, the muscle definition too sharp, the scar standing out white against skin that seemed stretched. 3 days without food, maybe 4. I'd been so focused on the cache, on the missing meat, on the tracks and the claw marks and the camera footage, on the thing outside wearing Justin's voice. Hadn't noticed I wasn't eating. Hadn't felt hungry until right now, this second, with my stomach trying to fold in on itself. The cramping got worse. I sat down hard in the desk chair. Justin's badge was down there, outside, placed there for me to find. The thing outside had Justin's voice. Knew things only Justin knew. Private things, true things. The funeral, the cucumber sandwiches, Highway 12, past Lolo Creek. But Justin was dead, had to be dead. 5 years gone, 3-week search, 40 volunteers, helicopters and dog teams and grid patterns through every drainage in a 20-mile radius. They found his pack, found nothing else. Missing, presumed dead. That was the report. That was what Floyd told me when he finally made me stop searching. Whatever was outside, it wasn't Justin. It wore his voice, wore his memories, wore them like a mask, like something it picked up and put on. Something that had been out here 5 years, waiting. Something that understood hunger. I looked at the food shelf again, at the meals I never ate, at my hands still shaking, thin and weak. It had drawn me here, to this specific tower, the one I'd asked about for 2 years, the one 16 miles from Justin's last known position. It had waited while I requested the assignment, while I drove up here, while I unpacked and settled in, while I stopped eating without noticing. The same hunger. That's what it had said through the radio. That's what it wanted. The meat from the cache. And then more. And then, my thoughts scattered. Couldn't hold them together. Too many pieces moving too fast, fragmenting before I could grab them. Justin's badge outside. The creature at the window. 3 days without food, maybe 4, maybe more. The voice that sounded exactly like my brother. My brother who died in these woods. My brother who I came here to find. The thing outside had been patient. So patient. It understood this kind of hunger. The desperate gnawing kind that hollows you out from the inside. The kind that makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. The kind I was feeling right now, cramping and twisting in my gut. It had been waiting for me to get hungry enough. I raised the pistol, aimed it at the door where the wood was starting to bow inward. The barricade I'd built, the cot, the supply crates, all 60 pounds of canned goods and dried beans, shifted forward, maybe an inch, then another inch. The whole door frame was flexing. The east wall screamed again, metal on metal. Another rivet popped and hit the floor somewhere behind me, rolled under the desk probably. I didn't turn to look. The panel that had already peeled back was getting worse. I could see the gap now, maybe 3 inches wide, running vertical along the seam. Cold air poured through, colder than the broken north window, the kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. I backed up until my shoulders hit the corner where the south and west walls met. Couldn't go any farther. The Glock was steady in my right hand. Academy training from 15 years back. Two-handed grip, sight alignment, breathe. Except I wasn't breathing steady. My chest was doing these short, shallow pulls that didn't get enough air. The door buckled again. The deadbolt was still holding, but the wood around it was starting to crack. Long splits running up from the handle. The thing outside was stronger than anything I'd ever seen. Stronger than made sense. A bear couldn't do this. A person couldn't do this. I thought about the tracks in the snow, the stride length, 4 feet between prints, the claw marks 8 feet up the trees. Willard, Justin's voice again, coming from the east wall now where the metal was peeling. Not the north window anymore. It had moved. Or maybe it was everywhere at once. I didn't know. Please! The voice cracked, wet, like crying except not quite right. I can't feel my hands. I can't feel anything. It's been so long. My finger was on the trigger, safety off. I'd flicked it off when the window broke. 16 rounds total, 1 chambered, 15 in the magazine. I didn't know if that would be enough. Didn't know if bullets would do anything at all. Just open the door. Justin's voice. Exactly how he sounded that last morning before his solo patrol, before he drove out to the Clearwater drainage and never came back. I'm so tired, Willie. I just want to come inside. The pleading shifted mid-sentence. The last word, inside, came out wrong, deeper, guttural, like something in the chest was growling the syllables instead of speaking them. Then it snapped back to Justin's normal voice. Please, you're my brother. Another rivet popped. The gap in the east wall was 6 inches now. I could see through it if I wanted to look. I didn't want to look. The door frame cracked louder. The top hinge was pulling away from the wood. I watched the screws start to come out, just millimeters, but moving. I'm so hungry. The voice was weeping now, full sobs between the words. You don't know what it's like. You don't know how it feels. I can smell the meat. I can smell you. Just let me in. Just open it. Please, Willard, please. The words dissolved into that wet snarling again, consonants breaking apart, then reforming, then breaking, like something was trying to hold human speech together and failing. I kept the pistol aimed at the door. My arms were shaking, not from fear, from the weight, from not eating for 3 days, maybe 4. My muscles felt wrong, thin. I'd lost weight I didn't have to lose. The snarling stopped. Silence for maybe 5 seconds. Then Justin's voice again, quiet this time, calm. You wanted to find me. That's why you came here. That's why you asked for this tower. My stomach cramped, sharp twist that made me want to double over. I didn't, kept the gun up. You studied the maps, the voice said. During your lunch breaks, you asked Floyd about coverage areas, about which towers were unmanned. You never told anyone why. That was true, all of it. I'd spent 2 years working toward this posting. Casual questions, checking old patrol routes, finding out which towers went dark in winter. Whitefish Ridge had been unmanned for 3 seasons, 16 miles from where Justin's pack was found, 16 miles from the last place anyone looked. I'd thought I was being smart, thought I was investigating, doing what the official search hadn't done. You wanted this, the voice said. You asked for it. The door buckled again. The bottom hinge was pulling now too. The whole frame was coming apart. I realized something then, standing in that corner with my back against the walls and the gun shaking in my hands. Justin hadn't gotten lost 5 years ago, hadn't fallen into a ravine or died of exposure or been taken by a bear. He'd changed into something else. The search parties had been looking for a body, for bones, for evidence of death. They'd never found anything because there was nothing to find, not the way they were looking. Justin had still been alive, was still alive now, just not in any way that made sense, not in any way I could recognize. The thing outside wasn't wearing Justin's voice like a mask. It was Justin, or what Justin had become, what he'd turned into out here in the woods during that solo patrol when something found him, something that understood hunger, the kind that hollows you out, the kind that makes you do things. My finger tightened on the trigger, not pulling, just pressure, just ready. I didn't mean for this, the voice said. Quieter now, almost a whisper. I didn't want it, but it happened anyway. And I've been waiting. I've been so cold. I've been so hungry. And you came. You finally came. The east wall panel peeled back another few inches with a shriek of metal. The gap was wide enough now, wide enough for something to reach through if it wanted. I understood then why I'd really asked for this posting. Not to find answers, not to solve anything. I'd been called here. The hunger had reached across 5 years and 16 miles and pulled me to this exact spot, to this tower, this night. It had known I'd come looking, had known I wouldn't stop, had waited with Justin's voice and Justin's memories and Justin's badge on a leather cord, placed in fresh snow where I'd see it. Some part of me had known. Some part had wanted to come anyway. The door started to splinter, not buckling anymore, actually breaking. The wood cracked down the middle in a vertical line from top to bottom. The deadbolt was still holding, but the door around it was giving way. I kept the Glock raised, aimed center mass. That's what they taught us. Center mass, squeeze don't pull, follow through. The voice outside shifted again, human to inhuman to human, words dissolving and reforming. Let me in. Let me in, let me in. I'd opened this door the moment I'd asked Floyd for the Whitefish Ridge assignment. The moment I'd packed my gear and driven up that access road. The moment I'd climbed these stairs and unpacked my bag and set up my cot. I'd opened it without knowing, and now I couldn't close it. The wood split wider. I could see movement through the crack. Something dark, something tall. The shadow from the north window, pressed against the door now, pushing through. I steadied my grip, both hands, elbows locked. Sight picture, front sight, target, front sight. My brother was outside that door. What used to be my brother, what he'd become when the hunger took him, and he'd called me here to join him, to stop fighting it, to open the door and let it in. I'd spent 5 years looking for answers, for closure, for some way to make sense of what happened. Now I had it. Now I knew. And the weight of that knowledge pressed down on me like the whole tower was collapsing, like the framework was buckling under something too heavy to hold, like everything I'd built to keep myself going, the routine, the radio checks, the belief that I could find him, was splintering apart. The door cracked wider. The thing outside pushed harder, and I stood there in the corner with the gun raised and my hands shaking and my stomach cramping from hunger I hadn't noticed, facing what I'd spent 5 years searching for, facing the darkness I'd asked to find.